Hi, this is Ken Hackshaw. Welcome to another Risk Unfiltered. It's my pleasure, it's a privilege as well, to have two young entrepreneurs from Trinidad and Tobago with us and working in different industries. And I'll ask them to introduce what they do. But welcome Aneshia Beach and Shauna Grant to Risk Unfiltered. And this is where we have a unscripted conversation about things related to, but not necessarily focused on risk management. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask, I'll start with you, Anisha. Just give a brief intro of who you are.
Okay, so hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Anisha Beach. I'm from San Fernando, Trinidad, and I wear several hats in the entrepreneurial space. I have two companies, one of which is a children's band. I'm a director and a junior band leader of a children's band based out of San Fernando, and we focus on children's carnival as well as festivals outside of carnival itself. So we do a lot of costume design for carnival, as well as different arenas for junior pageants, etc. Anything within the junior sphere, we design and create costumes. So that's one, and we are trying to market children's carnival in a way that resembles big bands, so that we market our band for not only the costume but for the experience as well. So that's one. I also have a company called South is Love Entertainment Limited, where we are involved in several spheres. One is virtual entertainment, where we do virtual events, a mixture of virtual and in-person events. We would have just completed a carnival show, etc. We also do virtual event management and virtual conference management, as well as we are in the process of producing shows as well. So we have short shows right now, edutainment shows, but we are branching out into a larger sphere in terms of energy-based, etc., things that are based on promoting South Trinidad. So that's in a nutshell what I do.
Good. Shauna, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes. So my name is Shauna Grant. I'm the managing director of the Flour Bag Baking Company, which is an agro-processing company that does gluten-free baking mixes that takes the guesswork out of baking gluten-free items at home. So we found that quite a number of people are experiencing a lot of discomfort, intestinal discomfort, etc., from using gluten products, regular wheat products. So we saw a space in the market where we could help these home bakers kind of master gluten-free baking at home, because it could be quite a challenge to learn how to blend the different gluten-free flours together in order to create a very well finished good. So we really are all about, allowing the home baker to be creative with their home baking by not having to do all the difficult work of the blending of gluten-free flours.
Okay, great, good. So this is about entrepreneurial risk and opportunities. And so let me stay with you, Shauna. What is it that, well, do you now have a strategic plan for your business and what that business is going to look like hopefully in a year or two?
Well, we definitely have very solid plans for this year. So I can say for sure that we are on par with our goals as of right now. So one of our major goals was getting into supermarkets. So we have started that process. We have gotten into, I would say, 80% of the stores we wanted to get into for at least the first quarter. So we're thinking, okay, if we got this far, let us try and probably push the boundary a little bit. So that's one. Another is building our own dedicated gluten-free facility.
So you have accomplished those things. Does Flour Baking Company have a documented strategic plan that you can measure as you move along that continuum? But do you now have that? And it's okay to say no, because that's what these
Well,
conversations.
definitely not a 5-year plan. A strategic plan that is detailed, I wouldn't say that. Like,
Okay.
we know for sure the broad areas that we definitely need to cover in this year.
You need to have that, or you should have that plan, so that you could look at it, make adjustments for shortfalls or successes. But you need a game plan to operate by, and not a game plan that's here or in your.
No, it's definitely written down.
Okay.
It's definitely written down, yes.
Yeah, but hopefully not like a recipe. So we'll come back. Aneshia, what about you? For let's work with SIL first, because that seems to be one with the wider, bigger goals and objectives. Yeah. Does SIL have a documented strategic plan?
We had goals. We just had goals that we would have written down, but we didn't have
Okay.
a full
All
document.
right. So lessons learned here for entrepreneurs. Okay. So you're newly formed, or you just formed a business a year or two. You know, what it is I really want to achieve. I would like to see your hardcore objectives. These are the things we need. These are the things we want to achieve. These are some time frames by which we want to achieve it. And you adjust as you go along, and you measure failures and successes as you go along. So it's like ways. You know, you're going into a country or a town that you aren't familiar with. You need some directions. And sometimes that directions have to come from a third party. So that gets into another type of risk as an entrepreneur that you need to look at. And we'll come to that in a few minutes, which is third party risk, which is the folks that you're dependent on for your successes. So SIL is up, flour baking companies up. You must have a map. So we need to start there. Yeah. And likewise, if one direction gets traffic gets tight, or there's an accident, it gives you deviation points. So then in your plan, you start asking, what if I don't get the venue, or what if I don't get the type of flour I need? What then do we do? Yeah. Too many times we manage our businesses ad hoc and on the fly. And there's some folks who probably succeeding like doing that. But think of how much more successful you can be if you do have a map. That's the first point. Let's put a map together for your business. And then in doing so, let's identify where you may run into some congestion, if I stay with the traffic analogy. So as I'm looking at SIL, what are some of the things that what are some of the traffic congestions you have run into thus far? And were there any lessons learned? So would you repeat those same things, or have you come up with an option?
Well, based on what we were intending to achieve, they would have been successful. However, some of the issues that we would have had, since we are service-based company, we would have had issues with relying on people. Some of our service providers just not showing up, or showing up very late and throwing off our product.
Okay.
So
it's a nice little segue into what we call third-party risk. So as an entrepreneur, you are dependent, we all are, on some provider, some vendor, some supplier. How do you then manage that risk? Did you do a postmortem of that event? Even for the successes. So actually, it's equally as important to do a postmortem of your successes.
Yeah.
If something worked, you would want to know what worked, why it worked, and can I then mirror that success going forward? Yeah, it's critical. So if you meet your numbers, or you had more folks attending, revisit that as you move forward. So let's go to the issue you brought up, that dependency on third parties. What can you now do to mitigate that potential risk? What options are open to you? Because if you're dependent on a DJ coming at a certain time, and so now we're getting into another element of risk management. It's kind of like dual purpose: disaster preparedness, business continuity. So you're preparing for something going wrong, and you should always do that and ask yourself, like, what if? So what are the what ifs are you now asking yourself in preparing for the next event, given the what has gone wrong in the last one?
Some of the issues that would have gone wrong. For instance, we had a sound quality issue, and one of the measures that we are going to put in place is, just in case, we would have a sound engineer on hand because it was simply going to be an issue of having your DJ, etc., and your sound persons there, but we'll have a more qualified sound engineer there. In the instance that there's something does go wrong still, because it is technology and technology can fail you,
Yes.
we are going to have, because we had to work with someone as a backup, and that would have cost us extra,
Right.
something that we didn't budget for. So we have in our budget now incidentals for engineers apart from that. Yeah, so post-production engineers now.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And those are you can engage folks on that basis. So if I need to call you, and we agree on a price, because if you have an agreed price going forward, it's going to be less than if at the last minute you call someone to film.
You call someone, exactly.
Shauna, what has gone wrong thus far that you have learned a lesson from?
Well, it started off as a failure and it ended up being a success. Okay. So we had lots of issues getting some of our raw materials last year with the whole lockdown.
Right.
And that caused us to kind of contract the number of products that we would make. And that threw off our entire plan of like rolling out our products into supermarkets, etc. And so what I did, I started sourcing local flours that I could blend myself to create the flour that we were importing. And because I was able to find a blend that worked and that replaced the blend that we were importing like really well, we ended up cutting our costs quite drastically. So, you know, we're making a little bit more profits on the products now because of that seeming problem that came up.
Right.
Now, yeah, so now we kind of created a win with that.
Good. So if we had to use that example and mirror the conversation we are having with Aneshia, you cannot rely on just memory in managing a business. And again, there are folks who are doing that and they may think that they are succeeding, but there are opportunity costs to bad decisions. And there's nothing preventing you from documenting your failures or your near misses that could then form part of a process or a workflow for how you do your business. So what I'm suggesting is to you guys, treat your business like a professional organization. Obviously, it's scaled to your size, yeah, but it does not negate you because you're an entrepreneur and it's a startup business, a small and medium enterprise, or whatever you want to classify the business as. But the more processes and environment you build around the business, failures will not be as intense, and you are going to have some failures, but the successes may come quicker and faster.
But it wouldn't, you don't think it will slow down a small micro business to document?
No, and that's a very good point, because talking about risk management ought not to retard your business. So you don't do your thingy and then you do risk management. It must be integrated. So it's seamless if it's done properly. So by way of this thing we call third party, you already know who are your main suppliers. Let me just demonstrate how simple it is. So you know who your main suppliers are. Same conversation with Aneshia. But then you have contingency plans. So if this one doesn't have my product, who else can I turn to? And you have that documented and a number or whatever. Because what you don't want to wait for the disaster. You don't want to be reactive. You want to be proactive and anticipatory. And that's risk management. So it's not like you have to go manage this risk, then go do your mixes and stuff. It's built into your processes. And this is a great example. So you already have a list of contingencies or business continuity plans. In essence, you have an option if there's a failure.
Yeah.
But again, back to the point with Aneshia, if you have to call someone last minute, they will charge you for that last minute call. But if you could have some prearranged agreement that says, okay, if I need you, what's the best price you can have to give me? And you put that in a contract. Guys, this works. it works? That's a question many small businesses ask. You know, why should I do all these things? And again, some of them may be succeeding, but they aren't succeeding as well as they might be, because when something does go wrong, they then need to react.
One thing I've learned is to get every single thing in writing.
Yeah.
Everything. No matter how close or friendship you think you have with someone, if someone promises you something with regard to your business, I would have learned that a lot over the last 2 months. Still gets in writing. If someone offers something to you for free or at a discounted price or anything, get it in writing.
Yeah.
Be it via message, but you see these phone conversations or in-person conversations, handshakes don't work. They just don't work.
No.
So,
and that leads to another aspect what we will call regulatory risks. So how are you protecting your goods and services? What do you have? And so, like in your case, you know, is it copyrighted? Is it patented? And so two words. And I was having this with the last with Ryan on the last podcast. How do you ring fence yourself, basically protect your product, and then also future-proof yourself as well? And I must go back to Shauna's question. Isn't that, you know, the concern with that's going to take up valuable time? Again, if there isn't a map as to what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, and then with some deviation as to if this route isn't available, or if there's a traffic jam, where else do I go? So at the end of all of this, it's the information that you have available is to help you make good decisions. And in the absence of information, you're making decisions on the fly, which you would probably have to do anyway. So what we're talking about is not nirvana. You're going to still have things. As good as you're planning, things are going to go wrong outside of what your plans may be. But the more anticipatory you are, the less reactive you will be. Good risk management presents crisis management. So two things. One is know who your dependencies are. And then you can ask these guys, okay, what could impact you that could impact me? So if you're depending on a DJ to come do a gig, okay, if this conversation turns into a strategic plan for you, you would then have a secondary person lined up in case this one doesn't show up. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, that's brilliant. Then you the same thing for your caterers if you're doing caterers. The difference being, and these are all factors you must consider. A caterer will need some advance notice. So if the caterer has a truck that they're relying on to deliver the goods to your venue and the truck goes down, there's no way you're calling somebody else unless it's a KFC to deliver some stuff. So what do you do in that instance? What if there's a risk what if a risk eventuates with one of your dependencies, your third parties or vendors? How can you help them manage their risks so that it doesn't impact upon you? And that has to be your concern. There may be very little you can do about it, but in engaging these third parties, in engaging these manufacturers, flower producers, artists, have that conversation. And if it's going to be a contract, then you need to find out, okay, ask that same person, what if? Especially if you're giving them a deposit. As part of your planning process, you must ask yourself the following question. What can hurt my business? What can hurt my event? What can hurt my production of of gathering the ingredients to make these recipes? What can impact me and my business? Remember, I'm using the word me first there, because risk management starts with you at the individual first. So what can hurt my next event? What risk can eventuate? And it's not the ones that you know or would have experienced. Those things you probably have that covered.
So you think that we should actually write and document these things as to what can go wrong? Yeah. And create plans for each of those scenarios?
Yes. I love the word scenarios. It's like doing a deep dive within your own organization. And folks, I would venture to suggest the following. So COVID happened, And I love to use this analogy. Good risk management is like a airbag in a vehicle. It wouldn't prevent the bad things from happening, but it will reduce the impact when those bad things happen. And again, everything is scaled to the business. So you're not going to hire somebody to come and spend a whole month meeting with you to do a risk assessment. That's not necessary. But you have to have some process by which you identify what can go wrong, scenario analysis, and have a plan to treat with that thing, not if, but when those things go wrong. Again, it prevents as much as possible those reactions. And reactions tend to be very costly when you're an entrepreneur or a small business.
So like I'm thinking now, how long do you think a risk management plan should take for a micro business like myself?
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
So let me push back a little bit. So
seems
the folks listening to this,
yeah,
you guys are the subject matter experts. Aneshia, you know your business well, and I know you know your business well. Same for you, Shauna. You know of what can go wrong by way of what has already gone wrong. What we are talking about are some of the things that you would not have not contemplated. That dependency, that third-party risk. That, if I have to suggest anything, start there because you have dependencies. So if you have two manufacturers right now that you use Shauna, or 2-3 DJs or other stuff, identify backups. It's like doing a business continuity plan for your business. And so that's where the scenario planning comes in. I need this person, but what if this person is not available? Or what if this ingredient is not available? What do we then do? And so listen to the beautiful part of this conversation when Shauna asks, does it have to be documented? God forbid either of you aren't available. If the knowledge is only contextual and retained here within your respective brains, and Aneshia, you get laryngitis, and I would imagine you have some folks who work with you with SIL. What then happens? If there's no one else that could be guided by something, either a document or workflow, something, right? And I'm not just talking whims and fancies or this is real. You are running a business, and it can and probably will be a very successful business. But you then have to ring fence that business and future-proof that business. And the things we're talking about is to do just that. For you, Shauna, you have recipes, yeah? And those recipes are documented or in writing?
Yes.
Yes. Why not? Why isn't your map or your strategic plan the same way? Why don't you now have something documented that says, okay, these are my vendors, suppliers, these are their contact information, and these are alternate vendors and suppliers. As simple as that. And going to what Aneshia was suggesting, and great, there's nothing that says you cannot have let's call it a service level agreement between these guys, between you and them, that says, this is a service I expect from you, this is a time frame. I'm not saying that you go do a 10-page document or contract. Start small. Start small, start simple. But start you must. You need to connect the dots. So your lessons, your successes and failures with this client or this product must inform how you're going to treat with the next one, as opposed to reliving those things.
My business partner is into safety. His profession is safety, HSE, etc. So sometimes I am the person who tends to hold him back because I get what you're saying now. I guess we just have to find a balance, because sometimes he would take it to an extreme of, okay, so we're doing this event, so we may need to rent, and I get him what he's saying, but he's saying we may need to rent a generator. We may just need to have a generator on backup. We may just need to have that. We need to have this on back. We need to have that. And I'm saying we don't have the budget realistically.
Right.
for these things to happen.
But you're spot on. Those things, so stay with the risk theme here. Those are what we call accepted risk. So if electricity goes, you have to make a decision that says, okay, do we put money out to rent a generator in case this happens?
Yes.
Yeah. And so that becomes a business decision. But here's this is what ought to go into the decision making. Going back to scenario analysis. What will it cost versus what I would potentially lose? Yeah. And based on data and information, folks, in the absence of that, then you're making, intuitive, which you do sometimes, and rash decisions. Now, if you know that the generator costs $5,000 to rent, but if he literally goes, I am losing $50,000.
Yes.
Math is simple, right? So you ought not to, going back to Shauna's question about documenting and stuff. The more data you have, the more data you compile as you go through your growth, better you will be moving forward. But your decisions can be sitting there, hey, we need a generator. Yeah, but that might cost too much. Okay, you're right, but what is might? What will it cost? And then if you don't use it this time, at least you have that information for the next time. Overall, what I'm suggesting is this: treat your business as an organization. Organizations have marketing plans, have strategic plans. You are in a space now where you could be doing that. So have those things because you want to grow. Because these things we're talking about, if those things manifest themselves, you're talking about your reputation. And guys, in most cases, you don't get a second chance to mess up or muck up your reputation. So yeah, it is having putting some formality and structure around what you guys do. Don't be flying off the pants. Don't be always making critical decisions on the fly of the moment.
I think with my SIL, we are a lot more structured than with my band because my band is more family generated, etc. And I'm only now since we had time because of COVID and we didn't have a band this year. So I'm looking at it and trying to structure it in a way so that in the event that something else happens again next year, the band would still be able to exist and survive.
Aneshia, you missed giving a plug for the last part that you just completed there. No, you were there. And so, but I don't think you were there for the entire thing with Ryan. Because he spoke at length about how do you then diversify in the space, right? And that goes both for you and Shauna about, okay, what else ought I or can I be doing?
Ken, if I could just add something here. Sure. One of the questions that I heard was about how to do all of this when you're just trying to run a small business. At what point do you need all of this complexity? That's kind of how I interpreted the question. And I want to just suggest a few things. One is that most people start a business almost like maybe a hobby and then realize, hey, I can make money from this, and it grows kind of organically. You start doing things a little more systematically, like maybe keeping accounts, because initially you just, produce something, you get paid and say, yay, I made some money. But then when you start taking it seriously, you need to document and so on. So one of the first things that you will start doing in a systematic way is managing your money and your accounting. And at some point in time, when the business grows, when you realize, okay, this is not something that I can handle by myself and do the business and whatever else I need to do, you need to hire an accountant. Similarly, with strategy and risk management, you can start doing it yourself in your head. But when you start thinking about having a serious business, this is not a hobby, you have to hire the support to help you to do this. And this would usually be like you hire an accountant, you will hire a strategist or a consultant, a risk management consultant to help you guide you through that process. Now, the things that Ken is describing, they're not, it's not a library of separate documents. All of these are really and truly, ideally, one simple document. Your strategic plan can also be your risk management and continuity plan and include your scenario analyses. It sounds really a lot more complex than it is, but these can be simple and not 100-page document you're talking about. At the beginning, Ken spoke about the vision and mission. They have meaning and purpose. And for me, it's as important as identifying where you want this business to go eventually. Is it just something that you do to make up time, or is it something that has a life beyond just producing something for the time being? And that to me is the essence of vision and mission. Your business must have a purpose beyond just generating income. Ryan said that, he doesn't do what he does just for the money. If you're just doing it for the money, it's kind of short-sighted and it's easier to fail, because when things start to go wrong and you realize, the money not coming in, you could just give it up. When you're doing it for a real passionate purpose or something beyond just making money, it can usually withstand a lot more blows than, okay, well, we're having a bad month or a couple of months. So for me, the purpose which some people can also say is your mission and vision, is really important. And going back to your traffic analogy, Ken, that's like your destination. You have to have a destination. And that destination is very different from the milestones and the goals. Those are measuring along the way. So your destination, purpose, mission, vision, I think is important.
Just to put all those things in context, and let me share with you something that tends to be controversial. So aligning your risk with strategy, or your value, mission, or your end, your destiny. If there is another job that you can fall back on, that may be a hindrance to you putting in the time or having the passion for that thing, that business that you have. Because there must be an opportunity cost. So this is where I'm going with it. If SIL is and Beach Associates is your major income, that's your prime income, the success or failure of that could determine your level of happiness. So then you tend to, then you will probably work harder at it. If you're thinking of it as just a job, to Natasha's point.
Yeah.
But if you have a 9 to 5 and then you're doing this thing at the side, the thing at the side is going to be the thing at the side. But if you have the thing at the side, it may not be getting the necessary attention that it needs, because there's an opportunity cost for that. So I had a conversation with a professional, and the question the lady asked me is, she wants to go into consulting. She has a 9 to 5. She wants to go into consulting. That's what she wants to, but she has a 9 to 5. And I can relate, because that's what's paying the bills.
Yeah.
Yeah. But at some point in time, if you can do both, great, do both. But there is an opportunity cost there. Something has to give, and something will give. That's a different kind of conversation. Well, those of you who have a 9 to 5 and you have a thing on the side. So if you have on the side, might be a side hustle, and that's fine. But if you, to what your mission and vision, to us, Natasha was saying, if it is that this is something you really want to do, this is of you, this is, you're giving birth to this thing and you want to see it through, through from cradle to grave, then you have to put that time and effort in, and you would have to make some hard decisions. Kevin, go ahead.
Good evening, folks. Pleasure to be here again. So to your point, and I know Natasha had revert back to the question of the vision and mission statement, and she hit the nail on the head, right? So the way I look at vision and mission statement, while they are words, I think it's what catapults you to the action that now takes you to doing whatever it is that you're in business and doing, right? So I think it starts with that, right? For me, I'm a visual person, so I like to see things visual. So I'll write those things down. Okay, what is the purpose of what I'm trying to do? What is the vision? The vision is what you're actually trying to complete or to do or to accomplish, whatever it is, right? So then that mission statement is XYZ. This is how I'm going to complete that said mission. So I think it's important for those things to go in tandem, because then that catapults you into the action in which you will then do in order to get to those specific goals or what have you. So that's my 2 cents on that. With regards to what you were saying about, having that fallback. So when you have a 9 to 5 and you have something on the side, right? And I want to add to that is the side will always be the side until you actually put in the effort to make the side your main, basically, right? So when you think about it, it's incumbent upon the person to say, all right, if the side is what I want to do full time and I have passion about it, then you need to take that risk, there goes your word, to actually go after that. Because when you get complacent and when you have something to fall back on, you're like, well, I can do this, whenever I get the chance to. But when you have if there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, and it's something that you wholeheartedly want to go into, then you have to put in that time. You have to put in that 110%. So I just wanted to add that.
No, great, and thanks for sharing.
I was going to say, that's interesting that you all raised that, because that's where, Ken, I would have explained that to you 1,000 times. I don't even work a 9 to 5. I work like a 9 to 8 sometimes. Like I just got in from work. So
and it is difficult. It is difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I go back to this person calling me and asking for my opinion and how to transition that. But there's no one cap fits all, and there's no template for this. That's that's a very personal decision. So, but Shauna, I know in your case, this
Yeah,
is
my case has been really different in terms of that because I ended up like it was difficult for me to stay in some of the jobs that I was in. And I recognize because I always had a love for small business.
right.
But these ventures were not working out and I had no choice but to just leave. And it just so happened that my own business blossomed out of that difficult situation.
Yeah.
So I was able to have the stability where I could, build this business like from the ground up, like but not having the worry of another, job to go to. So my experience was really different.
And so bringing it back to entrepreneurs, entrepreneurship. What obtains for training or guiding entrepreneurs? They tend to focus on, you have to have your accounts in shape and you have to do this, but there's little or no training about risk. And if COVID taught you guys anything, there has to be a level of preparation to treat with the what is, right? Because there's too much uncertainty and complexity coming up.
But the thing is, as a micro entrepreneur, you're coming into, your business kind of wide-eyed, bushy-tailed, not really thinking about problems that could crop up.
Right.
So I guess sometimes you kind of have to learn the hard way a little bit in order to start thinking, that you need to hedge against difficulties and whatnot.
That's okay, but it ought not to be like that though. Because what I'm advocating is, and that's why folks come to our programs, is if you have that information going into that growth and development could be a lot easier. It's going to be difficult.
No, but the thing is the environment. I find that the entrepreneurship space that we live in Trinidad doesn't really.
It does not.
Like make you even think about some of these things in terms of risk. Like I haven't really heard much of it in many of the entrepreneurship classes or whatnot that I've been in. It's only when problems crop up, then they will try to manage what has happened.
The Academy is trying to do its part in getting folks more risk intelligent, especially entrepreneurship. And one of the things we are focused on doing risk management workshops for secondary schools and young adults. Risk management is now ought to be a life skill. Because when I say it starts with you personally, then it's the same thing we're talking about now. You ought to be doing for your home. And it's not about, Natasha, it's not about having, 3 encyclopedias and hiring this. No, you start very small with the basics, but you ought to have them. And going back to, let's talk financial risks. So you have your operations risk, which is your day-to-day business. You have the regulatory thingy, those things you have to comply with. You have financial, you have now this business content. That's an enterprise risk management, folks. And you could be this small or this big. You are exposed to the same type of risk, most of them that a major conglomerate is exposed to. Scaled and proportionate to your size and type of business, but you have those risks. So you cannot be running around thinking, I don't need to know this. Those things are there. And if you don't treat with that, that thing's going to bite you on the butt. It
was good that Natasha sort of brought it kind of down to the level of where a micro business, how we'll be like implementing those like risk mitigation strategies in our business. So in terms of the financial, I think that's like the first place where a micro business would start. Because that's how we started really working with an accountant, getting things together and the accounting software and that sort of thing. So we're doing all of that and organizing that bank account, that's where a micro business would start.
Let me push back on that a little bit. And those things are a must. But let me just push back. So what if your business, you do all of that and the business fails? Because you didn't foresee something that you should have foreseen. So what I'm suggesting, that must be done in tandem with, that's where the word integration comes in. So when we're talking about enterprise, we're talking about risk to entrepreneurs or small business or micro businesses. that all those things must be done in tandem with the must act. Obviously that you don't have, let's say, a strategic plan, and these are just big buzzwords, guys. So I don't want that to defeat you doing what you have to do in a small way.
Yes.
Identifying the risk to those achievement of those objectives. So you misidentifying something that could hurt your business, but you have this accounting software and this accountant in the hopes that the business will do well enough so these people will be managing your money. So it's not like you do one or the other. You have to do those things in tandem with each other, I should say. So, and it may sound complicated, but it really isn't. It's just by you sitting down with your partner or partners and having these conversations, and then start putting in that structure in place.
Yeah.
Or you're 1 year in case of these associates, multiple years in the space. Shauna, you're about more than a year into the space.
3. Well, almost 3.
Almost 3. So you guys aren't newborns. You're still infants, but you aren't newborns. And you're not breastfeeding anymore. Now you're eating and drinking like a grown adult. What have you learned? What are you going to do next? Shauna, starting with you. What's your next step?
Really kind of fleshing out what our strategic plan would be. Because we do have general ideas, but it's not fully fleshed out. So that's where we would start.
At a minimum, do that. And then as you do that, then start asking yourself, well, what if? What can impact this objective? Yeah? Brilliant. That's a good start. Great. Madam Beach, what about you?
Continue working on our strategic plan, but also with regard to the different facets of the business. Look at focusing on what risks would be associated with each avenue. If it is the live stream, if it is our clothing, what different areas, well, the what ifs then, basically putting pen to paper, because we have several conversations about it, but we don't ever really write it down.
And your third party comment about your dependencies, similar with you, Shauna, those things you must have build that structure and flesh those things out. So I want to thank you, Shauna Grant and Aneshia Beach, for taking the time to spend with us on Risk Unfiltered. I look forward to engaging the folks on another episode of Risk Unfiltered. Thank you much.
Cheers. Thank you so much for having us.
My pleasure. Go forth and multiply the information now, right?
Thank you so much.
Cheers.